Well, good evening and welcome to Thursday Night Saws, as miscombobulated as it is tonight. But very pleased to be here. We have a couple guys already showed up, and I don't know if we will have anyone else tonight. I didn't hear back, but we have from Alabama. We have Bryant Ellis here tonight. And Bryant, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, sir. Brian Ellis, you're right, out of Northport, Alabama, right here next to Tuscaloosa. University of Alabama is right here at us. Uh, been in the dealership for family-owned dealership, about 27 years now. It has continued to grow over the years, and of course, was able to get on board there with Husqvarna in 2002 through 2007, and I was able to spend. I think we had about 3 years there on your team, and
Yeah.
under your tutelage and guidance, and some of my favorite times. Learned so much, and so I've just been in retail sales and training really ever since. I've done some work with John Deere in the ag industry, and then I've been back in the dealership now for 6 years. So, of course, my dad has retired in this last 12 months. So really, me and my brother, and we've got a good staff, running two and a half techs. And then we've got about 11 employees now. And we're just servicing our local community, surrounding counties. We've got six counties outside of Tuscaloosa County that we service regular, and that's their county DOTs and volunteer fire departments, and of course the state forestry commission. A lot of construction. We sold 6 saws today, just in construction industry. So Tuscaloosa still growing. This community and this county has been growing, and that's really been we've been fortunate to be part of that. But for the last 20 years, it's been on a steady incline, and not just in saws. I mean, obviously, chainsaws and of course, I was in forestry school at Mississippi State. It's always been dear to my heart, but the outdoor power equipment industry in general, zero turns. We sell about 600 string trimmers a year, close to 400 zero turns. So it's a OPE business in general.
Very good, very good. And Chris, tell them about yourself just a little bit.
I'm the immediate disaster response coordinator for God's Pit Crew, based out of Virginia. So I travel around the country whenever a disaster happens and lead volunteers and train a lot of people on chainsaw safety. We do a lot of technical tree work after storms, and then I've been blessed to start working with Tim at Forest Applications, doing some training around the country, training DOTs and power companies, and it's just other tree companies. So it's been a good ride.
Great, great. Well, tonight I kind of brought up the topic. I just want to invited Brian over is a topic of personal protective equipment, and it's been something that's kind of been dear to me, and we've promoted and pushed and designed and all kind of stuff over the years, and I guess the retail side of it is the toughest one now. A lot of that is mail order, I guess, has picked up a lot on personal protective stuff, but still the customer has a lot of choices out there now that they didn't used to have. And it's kind of interesting when in all my days kind of going from here to there and trying to talk people into even putting on a hard hat. And now there must be 25 or 30 different major brands that are out there, and and people have one for today and one for tomorrow and one for the next day. It's very interesting how PPE has picked up and gone, and it's so important that it has, because there's still, as we've talked about before with hard hats, it's struck bys are the number one injury. There's first thing when people pick up saws is thinking about getting lacerations or cuts. And so, the PPE can not necessarily keep them from happening in all cases, but they can lessen an injury should something happen. And it's quite interesting over the years. And I have one little video I came across yesterday that Rick Bryant from up in Cincinnati, Ohio, had sent to me with Bryant Equipment. And this was in 2004, I think he had marked. And this was a training that he had Soren come in and do with his field people. And I thought I would play it, and we come back and kind of talk about some of the things that he has on, and how it kind of started a trend in the States between Soren and Swedefor and LeBonville up in New England, and up in Hayward. There was a large supplier, Hayward, Wisconsin. And out of those three, it was really the only thing other than the Forest Service that was really putting personal protective equipment out in the marketplace at that time. And so I thought I'd play this, and look, it's kind of interesting. And one thing that I noticed is that this is what made him one heck of a teacher, is everything didn't go exactly right. And they had asked him to show him a little technique that he had pushed a little bit. And it's a small backleaner technique, he used to call it. And so we actually got this from a young fella down in Mississippi years ago after a presentation that we did. And Soren is pretty good at it. But on this one, I don't know whether he did it on purpose or what, but it's kind of interesting how he explains it out. So I thought I'd play this.
Okay, I was just curious. Yeah.
Gissat eller vet now.
Yes, because the hinges are so thin, so you eat
Here she is. Moving forward.
That's a lot of backload.
No, that's not. That was no time right out there. No.
Pop that wedge off. Yeah, if it doesn't pop the hinge. It's gonna pop the hinge. Hold on.
The hinge is not strong enough. So it's wrong.
Jeff, this is the 0 on the test.
I like how he explains this now.
This case here, when I bore through, I thought that I have a bigger hole in the front. So, when the welds were coming here now, you see now it gets thicker and thicker. So you could have driven the whole hinge in without to lift off the hinge. But you see here, it was too low to hold it. So that is backfire.
It looks good hanging up there, Jeff.
I appreciate that.
You can choke her and drag it right off that big clump of wood.
Take the whole piece. That's easy to grab.
Just put it inside. That I'm just getting. You see, my head is now sitting absolute straight up. So I just move the saw into the position. And after that, I shoot like this. And when I get down here, I lift up the saw, turn the hand in here, and get into the V here, where I get down. But what I did here now, I didn't move the arm here. I lift the saw up and go around like this and go over and use my thumb. If I don't move this position, and this is the same, that one will be the same. You understand me? I'm doing it. That's it. To make the things
Weird. There's definitely some weird stuff going on in the woods, isn't there?
Are you going in and praying for something? Can you do it?
Yeah, it didn't exactly go too well. And you know, it's a good kind of an illustration of what needs to take place is personal protective equipment, because you know he was a master at what he did, and his situation, he was probably using it mostly for teaching, I guess, but I don't think he expected that other tree to roll over, that limb come down. You know, that's the whole thing, that most of the time those incidents that take place are unexpected, and they're unplanned events. And so in that case, we've got to make sure that we try to protect ourselves from them as much as possible. So you know, the things of hard hats and eye and ear protection and leg protection and boots, all of those things have a reason to be there in the workplace. And one thing for sure, they don't work unless we use them, unless we put them on.
That's
What
right.
what do y'all hear as far as reasons for or against? What do you hear, you know, as far as perspective? What's the main thing? Is it head, eye, and ear, or chaps that people really look at? What do you think? What's really the factors out there that people think about with personal protective equipment?
Well, I would say, Tim, you know, we find a lot of our customers really tune in. They're good with the chaps, but they sometimes forget about, you know, headgear and, you know, face protection, eye protection, hearing protection. Uh, they may or may not be using gloves, but, you know, most of the gloves offer little protection if they're just a leather glove. And so chaps, we sell a lot of chaps, but they almost feel like they get away with just having it, or having those on and skipping some of the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then some, you know, another thing, they may have a helmet, but this helmet may be 8 or 10 years old, and it may have a few cracks in it. And it's really not going to offer them a lot of protection from a widowmaker or, you know, another hazard. So, you know, the main thing we see in the South, the stuff's hot. You know, it's just too hot. It's already too hot down here. That just makes us hotter, and, you know, gets us more fatigued. So that's probably the biggest thing we see with the some of the fire departments, or some of the DOT crews that's already having to work out there in the heat.
Yeah, that's kind of a situation I've heard for years and years, you know, but you start to look at law enforcement or fire departments, and they're going to have a bunch of gear on if they're going to go to work.
That's right.
You know, I had one I'd never forget down in College Station, Texas, back years ago, and the instructor called me a few weeks later, and he said, "Boy, my people are about muting us." He said it's 115 degrees down here this week, and they're saying they don't want to wear chaps. What should I do? Should I let them work without them? And and I said, well, let me ask you a question. Would you bleed more if the temperature is hot or if it's cold? And the technical question is, you're going to bleed probably more when it's hot temperature. But it's something to where, you know, he said, well, what do I do then? I said, well, I don't think anybody will complain about taking more breaks or maybe a little more water or whatever, you know, but they will complain quite a lot if they end up losing control of the saw with it being hot. But you know, I found too that a lot has changed with the going from chaps to working pants. You know, they have gotten a lot cooler. They've gotten, in some cases, it actually absorbs the sweat and actually can help to cool you. The way these things are built with different ventilations and things like that. So there's a lot has changed over the years from that standpoint. But it is something that's still kind of a hard sell to a lot of people, unless they have experienced it, I guess you'd say, and that's something that a lot of people do and wish they'd have had them on, you know.
You're exactly right.
But I got a couple pictures here too that I found that when you start looking at personal protective equipment, eye and ear and all those safety glasses everybody thinks about, and then goggles, and most people they try to go for the safety glasses. And on the job, it's important that you have at least face covering, but you really should have safety glasses with even using screens and things. But ear protection can be in the form of plugs, or it can be in the form of muffs. And then one thing that really makes a big difference today is this head protection with eye and ear, and they've got all the colors from hot pink to orange to red to everything else now. And then the standard work helmets that you'd see with Husqvarna and Steel. But that incorporates some face protection, or really some of the new screens are even rated the Z87 for eye protection as far as chainsawing goes. It doesn't cover the entire gamut of stuff for moisture coming through it and that kind of thing, splashes, but it does have Z87 on it, so it meets the portion of that standard. And so yeah, it makes it really nice to have everything together now. And then you start to look at leg protection, and I got on there and just flipped out some pictures, and it's amazing the different styles. You got the newer style wrap chaps from Husqvarna, and then the wraparounds, and then you've got I've used the fanner pants now for several years, and they've even got them with flags on them. So I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can get. Chris, do you have any of those yet?
I don't have the flags. I have the cloggers, and I love them. They're cool. Got veins all over them.
Yep.
Man, yeah, they're great.
Yeah, comfortable, and so there's a lot of different things have changed as far as working with them. And then the thing that all of them have in common is this, and this is quite interesting when you watch the chainsaw go into it. And it's not really a good test there, but that was wide open, I think a 271 steel, and he went right into it. And then looking at how the material started to come out of that, you can see it just kind of locked the chain down there too. But this is the pair of chaps, and you can see that it didn't cut through any. So if you'd have had that on with that particular situation on the leg, coming around cutting a briar or bush or something, and it comes past that and into your leg, that would be something that saved you from a lot of that blood. And then it does create good mechanics, though. And I know this is something that's dear to your heart, Brian, is to be able to take and clean the saws up. So, it'll wrap around the bar, chain, and sprocket, and that's how it works. We call it jamming. In other words, the chain grabs the material out of the chap, and it pulls it in, wraps around the bar, chain, and sprocket, and jams the saw up. And it does a good job of it in most cases.
It does.
And a lot of people think about Kevlar, and Kevlar, what OSHA specifies for private companies and stuff to utilize is what they say it must be out of ballistic nylon and or ballistic material. And so you have ballistic nylons or polyesters, and most of the chaps, like the Husqvarnas, most of the steel stuff you see is using some type of sometimes called modal, sometimes warp knit, but it's a ballistic material also, but it's usually white in color, where you'll see the Kevlar is yellow or goldish color. And both of them do basically the same thing. It's very strong fibers, probably the Kevlar a little stronger sometimes than the polyester, but it's not as much the strength as it is the pads and how they're woven, how many pads and how it's woven. And today, I mean, there's there's garments of 4 and 5 layers that are meeting the Forest Service and the ISO standards on cut resistance. There's a test that they have that they take the pads and they work at them in 3 or 4 different angles at a certain RPM, and it has to resist cut through. Not a real life test necessarily in the field, but it is a little bit different when you're out there bending and moving and that kind of stuff, and the material is moving. But it is a pretty good test to let you know that the product you're getting is it's been tested, and that's the UL classification label that you look for, or a U.S. Forest Service procurement standard. So that UL classification gives you a pretty good assurance that it's been tested. And so there's some things of that nature that is some tough stuff even to a knife.
It is. You're gonna have some time involved there.
Yeah, that one it gets a little tough cleaning it off the sprocket there, the bearing. But that's it. And then you've got the hands. And I don't know if you noticed, but in the video, Soren took them off when he was teaching them on that stump right there. But when he was cutting the tree there, he had his mittens on, and that's something that he got me started on years ago. And a lot of people kind of giggle at them, but it's something that if you've never tried them, they're amazing. And it gives you a lot of dexterity, and it's easy to get off and on, especially if you're working a chipper and brush and stuff like that too, is that it comes off your hand really easy. It goes back on real easy. But a lot of the climbers and workers like I call them rubber covered, but it's dip style gloves that are out of flexible materials, and a lot of people like those to be able to work with, and they are pretty comfortable running the saw. There's no doubt about it. But I just got started on the mittens because Soren and Steele sold them. Husqvarna had them for a while, and I guess Sweetforce still sells them today. But it's something that they're protected to the hands, and not necessarily do you need them when you're operating a saw, although it is nice around briars and those kinds of things. But it is something that if you're sharpening a saw, that's really the only time I've ever had somebody in training in all the years had to go to emergency room, and that was sharpening. I
Wow.
had 2 guys over the years that slipped off while filing the chain and sliced their knuckle to the bone. And I had one guy, he was down in Texas too. And matter of fact, I think it was in that same College Station class. And I was going around to the group. They were doubling up on some tables. They were sharpening the saws, and we were talking through stuff. And I was going around and discussing different things with different people. And I got around to the back, and this one guy was doing a really good job, but he didn't have any gloves on, And I told him, I said, man, you ought to put some gloves on. Oh, I can't use gloves, man. You can't do anything with gloves on. And I said, well, it'll be nice if you happen to slip. Oh, I don't usually slip. About 5 minutes later, I'm talking to somebody else, and he comes walking up to the front, dripping all over the floor. He caught his knuckle all the way to the bone. And I don't know, I might have jinxed him, but I don't know. But it's something where it was an accident for him, because I asked him, did you plan that just so you could talk about it or what? And he said, no, I didn't plan it. So it was an accident. But that's the whole thing. And I've even had my mittens and slip talking to people, not watching what you're doing, and slip. And I've actually had the point of a tooth go through my leather on the glove and get into my fingers.
Yep.
So, it's something that the gloves are a good tool to have there. So, but that's kind of the things out there: the head, eye, and ear, and well, there is one more, I guess, and that's hands and feet go along together, I guess. But there's some new stuff out there as far as chainsaw boots. Didn't used to be a whole lot. Soren had the Sweetforce boots that Kevlar lines. Then we worked on some with Weinbrenner out of Ohio that we had at Husqvarna for a while. But probably some of the best out there are the rubber style boots. They're a little hot for the South, but it is something where those are very resistant to the chainsaw. And those are rubber with rolled ballistic material in around, and so they have wooden shanks in them usually, and you can wear thick socks and be able to go pretty much year round with them. But they do get a little warm in the South. But this time of year they're pretty nice to have, or if you work in swamps,
That's right.
but that's probably the best protection out there. I came up with a design with Weinbrenner on the leather Husqvarna boots at that time, and we kind of incorporated both. We put a rubber composite with an abrasion material in it, and then put it inside of the leather, encased it in the leather of the boot. And they did pretty good for a while, but then they decided to drop them. But that was because there wasn't a whole lot of sales. And now you've got all the different manufacturers out there, some pretty neat high
That's right.
styles and those kinds of things. So what do you do, Chris, as far as requirements for volunteers and stuff? How do you get people? I know you have 25, 30 saws out running at sometimes. How do you keep everybody in PPE?
We provide PPE. We're just like a company, so we have to provide hard hats and chaps. Each tool trailer has 20 hard hats, 20 pairs of chaps, gloves, safety glasses. I just upgraded all the tool trailers from the old style forestry helmet to Petzls with better ear protection, and they're vented to try to combat some of that complaining when we're down south and it's super hot. You know, most places we go, it's hot. But if you pick up a saw, you got to wear your chaps, you got to wear your hard hat, you got to wear your boots, you got to wear your gloves. You got to wear your helmet. No questions asked. If someone doesn't wear them, then they don't run the saw and they'll pull limbs for a couple days. But everybody's pretty compliant.
So after they pull them a couple of days, they think about it more or what?
Yeah. I had a quick story. I had a guy come. We were in Louisiana and it was hot. There was a church group. They wanted to cut. They were new with us. The guy said, "I don't wear chaps. I don't wear hard hats. We just came down here to help people." And I said, "Well, if you want to work with us and you want to run a saw, you go wear everything." About 45 minutes after they'd gone out, I saw an ambulance coming through. And he had was a live oak was laying over. This guy that I was talking to, he cut a limb, the tree rolled, limb hit him in the back of the head, knocked him down to the ground, broke the suspension out of the helmet. He cracked 3 vertebrae, both eyes were black, did some dental damage, but he was rushed to the hospital. He came back. He was in the hospital for 4 days. He came back to the church with tears in his eyes and told me the doctor told him he would have been dead right there if he wouldn't have had the helmet on. So he was crying, said, "I wouldn't have seen my wife and my kids ever again if you wouldn't have forced me to wear that helmet." So I just wanted to come in here and thank you before I went home.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's real.
I've heard a lot of those kinds of stories over the years, and it's something where we don't think about it sometimes till something does happen. But it's not just us that we're thinking about it. I have guys all the time that say, "Well, I do this professionally. I've got a crew. I've climbed for years and years. I've done this, that, and other." And then 25 years in the business, and all of a sudden something happens.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that it doesn't make a difference how professional you are or how many hours that you have on a saw or driving a car, or a truck, is that when that unplanned event happens, you didn't expect it. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
And so you with your professionalism and your experience can hopefully limit the chances of those things taking place. There's no doubt, because you recognize more of the danger out there as you start to work. But it's sometimes impossible to be able to manage all of it, to be able to not miss something and that unplanned event happens. And that's the whole thing of PPE. Your first form of defense against injury should be your planning process. It should be you're looking at that situation and putting together steps that are going to, give you a successful and productive cut. But the real second line up there is your defense is the PPE for those times that plan doesn't go exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
So, it shouldn't be a question.
No.
And
Tim, I can still remember you telling us a chainsaw operator's really got 3 defenses. You got your education, you got good technique, and then you got your PPE. And when the first 2 fail you, that PPE may be what saves your life.
Yeah.
And I've never forgot that. I still use that just over the counter with volunteer fire departments or the Forest Commission. I mean, that gets attention. And the stats have changed over the years, but the average chainsaw injury to an insurance company is astronomical. And, a pair of chaps, although they have gone up and a lot of this new PPE gear has got, more expensive, a pair of chaps now is going to run you right at $100, even, just a functional or one of the classic styles, not getting into the technical or the technical pro, but, $100 pair of chaps, a $75 helmet system, some safety glasses and gloves and good boots that are going to offer some cut resistant material. I mean, it's a lot cheaper than what the hospital and the workman's comp and all those claims are going to be.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think you can go to an emergency room and fill out the paperwork for less than about $250. So,
That's right. That's right.
so if you're looking at profitability, it's much cheaper to get a pair of chaps and a hard hat. That's for sure. I had a couple questions come in, or a good couple statements. It's from John M. He said, I really don't know. I work with people who at times are not wearing some kind of PPE. I try to lead by example: a hard hat, ear protection, safety glasses, soft pants. And that's part of the key there, isn't it? And John's recognized that because if you wear it, then other people look at it.
Exactly.
I was talking last week. We had Dwayne Newstetter. I know you probably remember him up in Canada.
I do.
He's got Arbor Canada, and he was telling me, I did a podcast with him this week too, and he was telling me that when we went up and did the training, I guess it was Rip and I went up there the first time, and he went through it, and he said, you were the first one I ever seen that dressed in all that stuff, even back then. And he said, you had on all this stuff, and I think that was just crazy. And I'll be doggone, by the end of the day, I started thinking about it. And by Saturday, I had about $400 worth of stuff. So it does work. And that's what I saw all the time with places we'd go with Soren. He'd go in there, and naturally he talked pretty heavy about it because he manufactured it down there in Eclectic, Alabama. And he still, and Swede Ford today, still produces a lot for steel and all theirs for North America. But it's something that not all of it now, but they used to. And Soren, every place he went, he was pushing hard hats and chaps and pants for sure. But he always wore it. And people would come back, and that's the first thing they did was start saying, I'm gonna get that, And that's what you see today in the arborist industry. Tree care has really adopted, all of that stuff, and especially with some of the newer styles and things that are out, they go after it, and it's reduced quite a number of cuts and different things taking place. So important, so important. So what's your biggest seller? Is it chaps? Is that what you have? You have the Husqvarna?
It is. I mean, I'm actually at the store here tonight, and we keep anywhere from 30 to 40 pairs of chaps at all time. I'll have 12 to 15 helmet systems. And of course, we keep cases of safety glasses and disposable hearing protection. We have the earmuffs, and obviously a helmet system has all that anyway. But we'll keep the two that are most popular, the functional, which would be more kind of the homeowner, the classic or functional. And then the pro guys or a lot of the fire departments they'll go for that technical. And, it's got more straps. It'll have more high visibility, qualities built in, features and benefits to it. A lot of times they'll offer entire enclosement down the calf and all instead of just straps or and the same way with the helmet systems. They have come a long ways from back when we were training there in the early 2000s. They're a lot more comfortable. Like Chris said, they breathe a lot better. And you could probably speak to it better than I can, Tim, but one thing I learned from you, they do have a lifespan. I mean, at some point in time, if you get enough cuts or they just get worn through the woods with briars, or maybe you got too much, you've been sharpening with them and they've sort of got drenched with oil. At some point in time, they're not offering you that protection like they should, and are probably meeting that OSHA or ANSI standard. So, that's the thing about it too. I think I see some of our loggers sometimes, and you'll see the ones on their truck. It looks like they've been sharpening and probably have a gallon of bar oil soaked in them. And, it's probably time to replace those. Or if you've got a helmet system that's been cracked, or maybe it's just after 3 or 4 years, the UV light, it kind of wears them down and breaks them down. And it's just time to replace those.
Yeah, I was telling the guy the other day, I was asking the one of the things that you can do, polymer, the ABS plastics and things of the helmet systems, and they've gotten a lot longer life today because they come up with new compositions. But the water, the moisture is how they harden or soften it. So plastic, like trimmer line we used to do, put it in a jug with water and let it sit, and that kept it pliable. Same thing with a hard hat. So I always tell people the best thing to do with your hard hat when you get home is just put it upside down in the toilet, let it stay overnight, dry it off, and go back to work. Because that keep it moist. If you let it out in the sun, don't do that. I was just kidding. I know, Bryant, you'd try it. But anyway, when you start thinking through it a little bit, if it hangs out in the sunlight, the UV light kind of dries it out. And the next thing you know, and we used to always do, pushing on the sides of it. And if you see it kind of turning white, it's time to discard it. I've had guys on the West Coast with the fiberglass or aluminum hard hats, and they would say, well, this one it's not affected by all of that. I've had this thing since I got out of forestry school. I said, when was that? It's all about 28 years ago or so. And they still got the original plastic, and it's actually probably a leather band inside of it, and it's falling apart. And those things work deflection, whereas some of the new ones are impact. You have a side and top impact protection. But the helmet systems have come a long way. And one thing that a lot of people look at from the standpoint of replacing those, there's a date stamp.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in all polymer products in the States, and that date stamp tells you the month and the day that it was built, it was molded. That's not the date of expiration. That's when it was molded. And as long as it's in a box in a cabinet or something like that, it can be several years old and still be okay. And some of the manufacturers, OSHA basically states you should replace it annually unless otherwise listed by the manufacturer. But a lot of the manufacturers are 5 and 10 years now.
Yeah, they are.
And so they've gotten a lot better on the plastic blendings and stuff. But that's kind of interesting on that. Now the chaps, what we found on that is that if you let the chaps get really dirty and wet even, and I know sometimes you got to work in the moisture, but when you have dirty chaps, they don't work as well. So you gotta think about that, is that when the material gets matted down, and the same reason why you don't sew through if you're patching them up or something. And really you shouldn't patch them. I mean, if it's not into the pad, you probably could, but you never want to take and sew the outer material through the pad because that keeps it from pulling out.
Right.
And you got to have that fiber pulling out freely to be able to jam the saw. So check the care instructions on helmets as well as on the chaps, and follow the instructions, because some of them can be hand washed and dried. Some of them are machine washed and dry. And a lot of the new ones, machine washing and low temp dries are possible. So it's a good thing of maintenance. And then making sure boots are kind of weather resistant. Letting boots get all soggy, it can give you a hard time and doesn't do much for you. So that's a good little discussion on PPE, and so it's important that we kind of have people thinking through it, and it never is an expenditure that goes wasted, because it's a lot of injuries and things that take place out there, and personal protective gear can help to cut it down a little bit. And the other thing is that a lot of people don't realize it is a requirement if you're working on larger crews. 1 or 2 man operations, not, but 1 or 2 man operation, I guess the ones that really need to think about personal protection, because if you're like me and you get sick or get hurt, you don't have any income coming in. So, it's important that you take care of yourself with personal protective gear. That's really how professionals work. And then on the other hand, when you get up in, about 6 people in a crew or something like that, then you start falling under OSHA regulations that from the Department of Labor, and they're just trying to look out for your safety also, but and those that are about, out on the crew. And so it's mandatory that you have these items and operate with them. So
Yeah,
just
we inspect all of our gear when we get back every trip, and I probably throw away 3 to 4 pairs of chaps every time we get back because it's a liability. Let's say that I give a volunteer a pair of chaps and they got a 2-inch cut in them from the previous person, and then just so happens that the person operating that saw cuts themselves, cuts the chaps and the chaps fail because they were damaged, then we're liable. So we inspect everything. If there's any damage to the chaps at all, we pitch them or I use them for a demonstration and I cut them.
That's right.
Mhm. One thing too, I had a conversation this week with the legacy program. Somebody asked about electric saws or battery saws, not necessarily electric saws and chaps. And I hear this just about every presentation. People say, "Well, I've heard that chaps won't work with battery powered saws," and I think some of that goes back a few years to the plug-in saws. Uh, the E15 Husqvarna or E10, I think it was on the steel. They used them around mill sites and areas that they were cutting lumber piles and things like that. Plus, a lot of homeowners had them too, but they were a pretty expensive, high-powered saw. I think at E15's probably got 4, 5, 6 horsepower or something like that.
Hmm.
So when it hits a piece of wood, it doesn't slow down, and when it hits a chap, it doesn't slow down. But the difference there today is most of those were electrically switched. In other words, the power went right to the armature. You had a heavy armature, you had a moving chain with a lot of momentum, and so that would penetrate pretty easily through a chap, especially in a vertical position. But the saws today, they're smaller armatures, lighter weight, and they basically have a electronic control for the motor, and so they're designed to where at a certain back pressure, if you load the chain too much, the temperature and the electronics start to take over and shut it down. And so that works. On a gas saw, you have a centrifugal clutch, and I'm understanding there's new centrifugal clutch battery units coming out. I saw a video on, and the whole process there, you can have a 70 cc saw with a centrifugal clutch, and when you hit the wood hard enough, it starts to slip the clutch. Well, same thing. When you hit that chap, it starts to slip it. It binds up quicker. And so that's the concept of that centrifugal clutch. But the battery saw doesn't have that, but it actually has that resistor, transistor, whatever it is that basically then shuts the power down. And if they come out with one, I guess their concept is to be able to bring the engine or the motor RPM up some more, and then be able to use the centrifugal clutch even on the battery units. As they
That's
get
right.
into bigger units, I guess that's what they plan to do. So that's it. So the newer saws, and I guess I've tried it on chaps, and not a scientific test necessarily, but we've taken, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 pairs every time I come across a crew that's using a electric battery saw. We'll strap a pair of chaps, old pair of chaps on a log or something, and take. And I've used Husqvarna Echo on it, Husqvarna, I mean the steel, a couple models, and Milwaukee, Makita, and every single one of them, stopped. So the chaps worked. I know Husqvarna has a letter somebody was asking about it today, and from the class on Tuesday, and they were asking about it, and Husqvarna actually had a letter that came out that stated that they had tested and the reasons for it, and how it worked. And Steel made statements too that I'd asked about with the distributor, and but they don't have anything written on it, I don't think. But that a lot of their chaps are 9 layers and a 6 layer, and those are pretty much ISO standard. I don't think there'd be any problem. So, that's not an issue. And like I always say, and I think the biggest thing is understand that leg protection of anything that has that UL classification on it is better than a pair of blue jeans.
Absolutely.
So if you look at it that way, I've had guys say, well, no reason to put those chaps on. We got battery saws now. We got battery saws. We don't need the chaps because they won't work anyway. But that's not an attitude to have.
Yeah.
Because when something happens, that it will cut you pretty good. I'll guarantee you that. So, but anyhow, well, guys, I appreciate coming by. I have kind of a short subject tonight, but it's been great kind of chatting with you a little bit. And Chris, did you have anything going on you wanted to talk about and be thinking, Brian, if you got a sale or something coming up or anything, what any announcements?
Yeah, well, I got a class coming up, an open enrollment class. I'm excited about that.
That's April 29th. Is that right?
I believe so. I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Yeah, I think that's going to be at Cardi Berry Farm.
Yeah.
In Dry Fork, Virginia. That's the 25th to 22nd. 25th through the 27th.
You got it. Just outside of Danville. It's gonna be a good class. I'm looking forward to it.
Very good, very good. And David's helping me with one in Kingston, Georgia, coming up April 2nd through the 4th. And we've actually got a gentleman from Colorado is coming out, and then also a young lady actually from I think crew out in Arizona. So we got people coming across the country. So it'd be a good class. I've got about 5 signed up for that one. I think we've got one I think signed up for Danville, I believe. I think so.
Awesome.
I have to look. No, I can't remember. No, I think the other one they were talking about on the Kingston, but we still got some time.
Oh, yeah.
If you are interested, that gives you 2 good locations that you can work with, and information there on our YouTube and also on the e-store. All the information is on that. And then I've had one class already, be doing another one on February the 12th, and that's going to be a Zoom training class. We had a good group a couple weeks ago and went very, very well. That is $25 per person for a 2-hour basic chainsaw class, and you do get a certificate awarded for participation attending, and that's just covering a few basic things, making you aware of some different things, PPE, cutting techniques, this kind of thing. And we go through a little bit of sharpening and maintenance on the saw. Just kind of a quick overrun. And then I want to have coming up pretty quick. I'm still working on the things on it, but I'm going to be having some different smaller sessions too on just sharpening and maintenance. I call it reduced downtime, those kind of things. So that'll be out there. We did just get going on the Tuesday nights. We're doing the Legacy 2024 Legacy program. We've got guys, a couple from Mississippi and a couple from Georgia, West Virginia, and so that's a class for experienced operators that are wanting to be instructors, basically. And Chris went through it last year, and it's more or less geared up of how to get information from here to there. So it's how to put together programs, what should be in a program, and how to discuss it and all. And then I also have online training consultation and working with that with some of the power companies as well as looking at some different things with insurance companies. And so we've been doing quite a lot of getting that ready to go. Been working on presentations all day on it. And then I do have several things left. And I know Bryant, he's bought a bunch of stuff, and I felt sorry for him because I keep cutting the price down, but I got to get rid of it. But he got some of the stuff. But I've still got a few things left on the e-store. I've got a really good buy on some square ground files and those kinds of things, and a couple old game of logging things, hard hats and that kind of stuff. I got an ebook and also our ebooks, our e-video series. And I've got a bunch of sensible woodcutting videos. Remember that one, Bryant?
I do.
That thing is, I don't know, about 30,000 copies, I think Barbara told me it went out.
Wow.
And there's a lot of that. It's good, still good today, except I look a lot younger. That's that's some things out there that's going on. So we appreciate everybody helping out and taking a look at those things and so that's kind of what it's all about is trying to get chainsaw stuff out there and talk to people about it. And so we're staying busy with it. And I'm doing.
I've been sharing it for you, Tim, and try to, I tell you, I remember a lot of that information. I've still got some of it, but some of it was dated. So I just thought I'd update my kind of my library there on some of it and make sure I didn't have anything that was old. Some of the CDs were older, so I was glad to be able to get some new copies, and I sure appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I will say, I will mention our open house event. We do that annually. It's going to be March the 27th, 28th, and 29th. It's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And, we always, Chad Gainey will be with us. Chad always does a really good job with wood sculptures. And Lord, I guess he can carve about anything nowadays.
Yeah.
He's all the practice he's had. And of course, he's a Husqvarna ambassador. So he's able to help us with the brand. And we offer some basic chainsaw, stuff and demonstrations. We have demo chainsaws that we can go out and chop up customers and they're able to run or try some of the new battery saws. They're really becoming popular. I think we sold last year. We sold a little over 300 pieces of the Husqvarna battery equipment. So now that's chainsaws, pole saws, blowers, hedge trimmers. They've got a full line of it now, and they have homeowner chainsaws and then the climbing saws, the professional ones. So that's a really good line. It's a growing line, and we'll feed a barbecue lunch on that Wednesday, and we usually feed about 250 to 300 people on that day.
Uh-huh.
So we're looking
It's worth
forward
the
to
trip. Worth the trip to Tuscaloosa County, that's for sure, huh?
That's right.
All right. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time, and you're welcome to come in any Thursday night. And sometimes we have 4 or 5, and so I'd like to have a panel talking about stuff. Next Thursday, I'm going up to Virginia to pick up a RV, so I may do something on the ride up. I don't know, but we're gonna kind of skip Thursday night next week. But the following week we'll be back, so we'll try to make it happen. And Chris, anything else? I saw you had some kind of announcement going on, but I'm not going to press you on that. But it's
Oh no, it's just the class. I'm trying to push it a little bit.
Oh, gotcha. All right.
See if we're going to actually take a clip from tonight and just post it on my tree company's Facebook on Sunday. So,
Okay.
yes, sir.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I wish you good song, and all you that are checking in. We've had a few there. Let me see. Let me better look back over here again. I got saw pants. Is there a difference with jamming between rim sprockets and star sprockets? And Chris, you have anything on that? What do you think?
I think I've seen chaps work in both situations. Either way, it's going to lock it up.
Yeah, the binding is not as much on the sprocket itself, I don't think, as it is in the chain and the bar as it goes under the cover. That's where it kind of locks it up. But I see the rim sprocket, the material kind of wraps on both sides of it, and then star sprocket it usually goes to the E clip and the bearings there. So either way, that I don't think it would be milliseconds, if anything, in the difference there for sure. But it is a good question. Appreciate
It is.
that. That's from Abaz. And John, he said, "Got to go. Have a nice evening." I'm sorry we didn't get up on Facebook, But I will take the copy here and I'll post it in just a little bit. So we'll get it up on Facebook for any comments. I'll pass along to you guys. But other than that, thank you much for dropping by, and I wish you all good sawing. And we will see you next week or the week after one for sure. How about that?
Sounds good, Tim.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good.